Thank you everyone today for joining me for another episode of Lincoln Stories with Sony. On today's episode, we will be featuring Mr. Carlos Servant, a remarkable individual that has overcome life-changing events, a story that he's going to tell filled with hope, dreams, adversity, and also the importance of friendship in your lives. Please join us now for Carlos's story.
Hello all, my name is Carlos Servan. You will notice by my accent that I'm not from Nebraska. I am a Nebraskan now, but I was born and raised in Lima, Peru, in South America. My parents were one from the jungle, my dad, and my mom from the Andes. So they both moved to Lima, the capital, for better opportunities during a lot of political turmoil in the 60s. So they didn't have high school or even in many places elementary school in their hometowns. So when they moved to Lima, they were expected to work during the day and to go to school in the evenings. For my dad, my mom was just expected to help her mom and later on her older siblings. Eventually they met and started to have children. We are 8 siblings, 4 boys and 4 girls. As we were growing up, we knew that we were poor, but we were happy, so we didn't care. We had our parents' stable home, yet the government wasn't stable. There were a lot of blackouts, especially on the weekends. There were a lot of strikes from everywhere. We have dictatorship in the government. Sometimes helicopters will fly over towns and just shoot at people when they were trying to strike or do demonstrations. So I was growing up under that, and that was kind of normal. My parents didn't have college, but they always instilled on us the importance of having a good foundation, a good education. But also they wanted us to be hardworking people and do better. My dad was working for the Republican Guard as a non-officer, so he wasn't an officer. And he told the boys if we wanted to become law enforcement or military, to shoot for officer school. So I grew up thinking about that. I grew up as a very active person. I was not born blind. As you will notice, I don't have a right hand. Back then, I did have my right hand. In fact, I'm a right-handed. I was very active, still am, I think, but I did karate, I did a lot of running, climbing, always active, helping my dad, my mom, the neighbors. My dad will teach us, if you are done with things at home, go and knock the door next door so to see if you can help there, but don't stay doing nothing. And that's what we did, and we have fun, and then we could play. So by the time I was maybe 6, 7 years old, my first job was to help the milkmen to sell or to distribute the milk around our hometown. So I did that when I was 6 years old during the school break. I enjoyed that. My dad told me that we didn't have to work because we have enough to have food and shelter at home. But he just wanted me to be organized with my time, to discipline myself, and to value work. And on top of that, I had fun working at that young age. Later on, my parents were able to buy a refrigerator at home, and because we didn't have enough food to store it there, we started to make popsicles, and my sister and I went to the beach to sell them. Very hot summers, also during the breaks. Eh, and I saw how tough it was to work at that young age, but I knew that if I didn't have luck selling all the popsicles, then I was going home and I still had food to eat. Yet I saw others that will do that, and they didn't leave the beach until they could sell everything because they needed to bring food to their homes. So I value that when I was a little kid. Now my dad keeps building the house. In the beginning were just brick walls, and then eventually we got a cement type of roof because we needed to build a second floor with more sleeping rooms there, and that's what we did. So we keep growing up, the family keep growing too. By the time I was already 15, 16, I noticed that my dad will have serious conversations with my older siblings, 3 of them, especially my older brother, because he was the oldest, he was the boy, then 2 sisters, and then I was the next boy. So I pay attention, and he will talk to them. Okay, you are about to finish high school. This is your last year. What are you going to do after that? And my brother wanted to get into the military school for officers. So I watched him training, getting ready to get in there, tried the first time, the second time, the third time. He got it the 4th time, but not the military school. He got into the National Guard officers. So by the time I was 16, my dad called me and said, you are now in your last year of school. What are you thinking on doing for the rest of your life? And I thought, well, yeah, I want to be a military officer, just like the family. And he told me, well, you have to go to school in the afternoons, go to a preparation academy, and then you have to discipline yourself, because by the end of the year, that's when the exams started. Now, by then, things in politics started worse also in Peru. By 1979, 1980, a new terrorist group was starting in Peru, Shining Path, a communist movement based on Maoist and Marxist ideology. So Shining Path was becoming stronger. They were against anything but their choice, meaning they didn't want democracy. They thought that the system was like an old pair of shoes. You just throw them away and you need a new pair. So they wanted a new whole communist system, and they were willing to do anything for it. Strikes almost every week, blackouts every weekend, car bombs almost every day in different parts of Peru, police stations being blown out, buildings, commercial, banks, municipalities, and on top of that, crime. So when we went out, we were always walking and very alert for any kind of sound, any kind of thing that could put in risk our life and also the life of our loved ones. So you have to be a little crazy to think about becoming a military or police. But being young, we like risks, I guess. And that's what I wanted to do. So I started to get training, and like my brother, I didn't get into the military school the first time. Almost nobody does. Only if you're maybe a son of a general, you would. So I was getting ready for my second year. And during that preparation, my schedule was like this: getting up at 5:30 in the morning, run and exercise for 60 minutes, get home, shower, get my breakfast, and then go to school. By 1 p.m., went back home, had lunch, went to downtown Lima, and at 2 o'clock until 5:30, more classes to get ready for uh, the military school test. Then I went, at 6 p.m. running until 7:30. By 8:15, after shower and so forth, went back home to have dinner and then do homework, and then get up again next morning at 5:30. So I had to discipline myself. And many kids and adolescents at that age, that's what we had to do, especially when we have strict parents. By the middle of that year in 1983, keeping in mind that I wasn't able to get accepted into the military school, by the middle of 1983, terrorism was even worse. And the police detective academy started to recruit more members because many detectives and policemen were dying. So they have an accelerated program, and I was able to compete for that and was accepted. I still remember being very happy and excited when I was accepted. I didn't want my parents to come with me for the news because I was afraid to bring the bad news to them, especially knowing how sad they got after so much they invest and so much work I put together, and getting that disappointment. And when I was accepted, I was so happy. I never felt so happy in my life. I came out of the academy to give the great news. My parents were not there, of course, because I told them not to be there. So took the bus and got finally to my hometown, and I ran the rest of the way to my home. And when I was by the corner, I saw my dad standing by the door and kind of recognized him, being tense. And when he saw me running, his body changed, kind of. So the closer I got, I was smiling, he was smiling, and we just hugged, and he was so happy. He called my mom to congratulate me, and my mom started to cry, and I didn't know why she was crying. My guess was she knew I was leaving home and I wasn't going to come back home after that, that something could happen to me once I'm in the academy, or when I graduate and I could be killed, or maybe the combination of those two. So then in the academy, we were even expected to get into even better physical shape and more disciplined. And again, the terrorist attacks keep increasing, more deaths, more turmoil. Most young people, if they could, they will immigrate to Venezuela, to Argentina, to Europe and the US. Not me. I wanted to fight for my country, to bring peace to my country, to get a country with democracy. So 3 years of hard training, then I got into my 4th year, got in love with the perfect girl, somebody who I met in my neighborhood. And when you are young, the first love in your life. Then I'm going to graduate as a lieutenant, going to be successful in life. God blessed me with, being strong, smart, talented, almost with athletic skills, knowing karate, knowing how to do self-defense. So I can protect my family. My girlfriend and I didn't talk about marriage, but it was implied because that's the way how we behave, in the neighborhood. Her parents, my parents. Then my dad died in that last year, and soon after, when I was on training, a grenade exploded in my right hand, and I also became blind. So you can imagine the shock for me, but also for my family. Here I thought I want to fight terrorism, and I didn't have a chance to do it. But my new life was I needed to fight any obstacles that will come ahead of me. And I didn't know how in Peru. I tried different things. The police wouldn't give me a pension. Inflation was very, very high. Almost, I think it was, according to statistics, 10,000% inflation in 5 years. It was impossible to get a job for young people, even worse for somebody with a disability. So eventually I thought, people are immigrating to the US. I think I'm going to the US. So I started to manage a way to get the government send me to the US. They talked to the American embassy, the DEA, the CIA have their representatives. They also were helping the fight against terrorism and the drug dealers. So a deal was made, to come to America so I could get some surgery and eventually maybe training if I didn't have luck with surgery. I tried everything. My mom too. I even went to a shaman. We call it brujos, those guys who do herbs. They don't use any science. Nothing worked. People pray for me and everything didn't work. So we came to the US in 1989. April 15th, I remember. That's my nephew's birthday. So we came to Baltimore at the Johns Hopkins Hospital, where the hospital had an agreement with the Peruvian government. Now, the plan originally was to come with my younger brother, who was back then 17, no, he was 18 already, almost 19. So my mom could stay with my younger siblings, who were only 4 and 6. Well, maybe 5 and 7, I think. I'm getting a little confused. But they were very young. But the American government denied my brother's visa because they thought, and rightly so, that we wanted to stay in America. I remember being on the embassy, the American consulate asking my brother, "Do you have a permanent job?" "No." Do you speak English?" "No." "Do you go to college?" "No." Visa denied. And my brother being very sad because it was also his future. And I thought, now what am I going to do? So I asked that question and they said, my mom, knowing that we have little siblings and that she was going to go back, I couldn't stay by myself. So I was determined to come to America. We did come, like I said, April 15th of 1989. My mom was hopeful that I was going to have a surgery. I kind of knew that it wouldn't work. So after the surgery and the doctor said that it didn't work, in my mind I thought, okay, that's over with. Now I need to start looking for training. My mom, however, started to sob, sobs that came way from the bottom of her guts. And I never felt so much emotional pain to see my lovely mother crying. She almost passed out just sobbing, those things that just comes from your guts that she couldn't cry out. And as I was trying to console her, a man came speaking some Spanish, accented Spanish, and he was, what's going on here? What happened? So I explained to him what happened, and he said, well, look for help here in America. You don't want to go back to Peru. He was from Texas, and I said, well, yeah, but how do we start? And he said, let me make some phone calls. So he went to a payphone. Back then we didn't have cell phones, I guess. And came back after 15, 20 minutes, and he said, all I can tell you is that I found out that there is a church nearby. Go there and ask for help. And he told me not to give up. And I also knew I didn't want to give up. However, I didn't know how yet. So we went to that church. Next to the church, they have something called the Hispanic Apostolate, where they give assistance to immigrants, especially Spanish speakings, but they serve immigrants from all over the world. So I got there, remember Mother Teresa, I'm sorry, not Mother Teresa, Sister Mary. Sister Mary saying, okay, young man, what do you want? And I thought, well, I like to have a chance to get some training, go to college and get a job, stay in America. And she was very plain and irritated. Well, you asked for nothing, eh? How do you expect us to help you? Well, I never thought a nun will behave that way, but it was just how blunt she was. And then she asked the secretary to look on the pay phone for something, services for the blind or something. So they found on the yellow pages the National Federation of the Blind. So they took me there. And by then I keep thinking, okay, what am I going to ask them? America, now I'm here in America, what do I do now? I don't speak English. I don't know what I'm going to tell them. So just picturing some TV movies, I guess, I thought, okay, so maybe I can ask for a nursing home for the blind, so then I won't be a burden to my family. My mom can go home, and I'm not going to be a burden to them. So we got to this 4-story building. I said, okay, it has 4 floors. They say that the reception was on the 4th floor. And as we were going up the elevator, we were with an interpreter and my mom. My mom was telling me what was going on. So we got up there, and I put my puppy face and said, I'm blind and I need help. The interpreter did that, and they got an interpreter, and eventually they gave me a cane and told me to get training. The interpreter called New Mexico. I think they knew somebody in New Mexico. I went to New Mexico to get training. I was able to get an extension visa, and I knew that the only way I could stay in America was by getting a work visa. So getting a student visa and eventually a work visa. So I needed to learn English quick, and I just worked very hard. When I was at the training center, I had to try to guess what I was learning in the evenings. I would study every evening. I still remember the first time I touched the computer and talked to me, the computer telling me, you have performed an illegal operation. I thought they were going to call immigration and send me back to Peru. I didn't have food. After I finished my training, what do I do now? I had nightmares thinking that I was going to be deported. I wasn't illegal, and I didn't want to stay illegal. By the way, my girlfriend, when she knew I was not going to get my sight back, she left me. And then I met, after a year, another girl. Her name is Kathy. She's my wife now. So she was still in Peru, Kathy. And I miss her a lot. And I knew if I stay here illegally or marry someone else, I couldn't bring her. So when my visa, my extension visa was about to expire, I was able to get a sponsor, finish my undergraduate, did my master's in public administration with a dual degree on law. Now to stay, I needed to find a work visa. Looking for jobs all over, I found one in Nebraska. They contacted me and they said that they were willing to help me. Dr. Van Zandt back there, Pearl Van Zandt, she was the director, and she helped me to do all that paperwork. So I had to thank her for that. Also thank Jim Chase in New Mexico, who became my sponsor. My kids were born in Albuquerque. They grew up here, they went to school here, so we are all Nebraskans. That's how we see it. And why do I tell you this story? Because to me, Nebraska is home now. As I reflect upon why we moved to Nebraska, but mainly why we decided to stay in Nebraska, is because of the culture here. People are hardworking people. They are humble. The education is very good for school. Crime is very low. As soon as there is a social issue, society gets together to solve it together. And in Peru, we brag a lot about how flavorful our food is. And the food is a result of immigrants from Europe, Africa, Asia, ingredients from the Andes, the jungle. So that makes the great food in Peru. And I think that's how Lincoln is, getting immigrants from all over, diverse, and it's becoming flavorful. Wherever I go, I see people from different backgrounds, Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, and we are becoming a stronger and more flavorful, and that's what I would like to say about Lincoln. Thank you all.
Thank you for joining us for Carlos' story. I hope you enjoyed the story that he shared with life adversity, challenges, and the remarkable things that we as a community can do for each other. It's very important to know the things that changes our lives and how it affects us, and also how it helps us grow. I hope you join us again for our next episode here with Lincoln Stories with Sony. And if you want to know more about Carlos' story in more depth and detail, he is an author of his own story, Running Dreams.